Welcome to All Things in the Name of Love. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks. Welcome to another episode of All Things in the Name of Love. Today I have with me Kurtis Lee Thomas, who it's a little bit long, but is a beautiful description of who I have a basic understanding of who you are. I'll find out more. But in 2011, you had an amazing and eye-opening spiritual experience that changed your world forever. You discovered amazing abilities and mysteries about yourself and the universe, and that you felt compelled to share it with the rest of the world. I love that. You are a renowned keynote speaker and one of the world's leading corporate mindfulness trainers. Thank you for that. He's spoken at large consciousness expositions in the world and has shared the stage with speakers such as Deepak Chopra and top Tony Robbins trainers. He's worked with Ivy League colleges and top Future 500 companies such as Nike, as well as the world's most prestigious casinos, including Foxwoods Resorts and MGM Casino. He's dedicated his career to awakening the best in people by quantifiably enhancing creativity, productivity, connection within the workplace. And I just want to thank you so much for that work, because it's so important right now in this time in our consciousness. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Sophia.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that what happened before 2011 to 2011 that you felt that massive spiritual shift.
Yeah, so I guess before 2011 is my past life, right?
Okay.
So, I was just focused on the normal matrix things of, creating a career and then a business, being an entrepreneur, being a go-getter, and didn't make that connection or have my spiritual awakening. And then in 2011, the universe knows how stubborn I am as a, Capricorn is very analytical and skeptical. So, a culmination of all different types of things happened all at the same time. And, some of it was spiritual, some of it was conspiracy, some of it was health, like every direction of all the ways people have their awakenings that, that lead them to different paths all happened to me at once. I had lost my brother. I had a psychic that like randomly came up to me in 7-Eleven, and my brother was trying to talk to me through this psychic at 7-Eleven, and that happened multiple times. And then I started seeing UFOs, and luckily I was with people, so I wasn't going crazy, and they saw it too. And then what else happened? My cousin, who's like a tinfoil hat conspiracy guy, who's been in my ear for like 5 years prior to that. And I'm like, cousin, you're crazy. Why would the government ever want to do that? Like, really? If that was true, it'd be on the news. Like,
Yeah.
all that. And, you know, and, and then all those things that he was saying from the previous 5 years, I actually started to see them come true. And I was like, oh my God, maybe cousin's not crazy. So that really put not even a dent. It could destroyed my reality and, turned my world upside down. But really, I realized later on that my world was turned right side up. So that was where it all started, where it just piqued my curiosity, right? It's like people don't really need to seek for transformation and change as much as they think they do. If you can feel the energy of curiosity, that's really what the universe just wants you to do, because that curiosity is really consciousness at work, and it will lead you down the path that you need to go. All you need is that spark of curiosity, which is why I love when they asked Albert Einstein, and they're like, how are you so smart? How do you do this? He's like, listen, I have no special talent. I'm just passionately curious.
Yeah.
So that's where it starts. Like curiosity did not kill the cat, ignorance did.
Yeah, no, I get that. I've been curious my entire life, and there's a fine line between curiosity and obsessive compulsion. Because I went from being curious to like getting a PhD in history, and that was definitely obsessive compulsion. But it started with a curiosity because I wanted to know, and I love that you had that convergence of different things happening at the same time. I saw my first UFO up in Mount Shasta 4 years ago, and I was like, and it stopped and went up and down and sideways, and I was like, that's not a star.
Yeah.
It's not watching me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And it was like it was like just beautiful. It was a beautiful night in the winter. And it was like, oh, okay, this is a real thing. And it's been a fascinating path of channeling that curiosity to, instead of going out and like finding all the things that I did too, because I'm all about nutrition and understanding what's really going on in the world, and to bring that to what's curious within. And I sense that that's what you help people start with, because like that going within part is so integral to understanding who we are at our core.
Yes, and going inward isn't a direction, it's a dimension, right?
Mhm.
And within that dimension, the answers to our, questions reside there. So, but you hear a lot of these cliche spiritual sayings like, the answers are within, we are all one, and it might take an entire lifetime to realize that those are actually true, but you got to experience it firsthand to really adopt it as your belief, to be
Yeah.
true.
Oh yeah, I completely agree that I've known since I was little that animals are not different from me. They're just in a different body. And so when I meet a new animal, I want to befriend them. I don't see them as separate. And it trips people out the way I interact with them, because they're like, in my perception, they aren't different. They're just in a different body. And
Love that.
that's been my quote unquote gateway for understanding the unity consciousness, because I see the divinity in all.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I remember when at one point I decided to like if there was an ant, I'd walk around, and if there was a fly or a spider, I would, move the spider out of the house, and if there was a fly, like I'd shoo him. And then I remember one day, this is how I knew I wasn't there yet spiritually. I moved to Utah, and I don't know, like the flies here, they're like in a gang. They are very they're mean. They go at you like they're vicious. And I tried my best, and I would sit there. I'd be on podcasts, and I have to like make sure the doors are shut because they just come out of nowhere. And I was on podcasts, and they're like what do they call it? Cosmikaze?
Yeah, I think so.
So, anyways, yeah, they're like hitting me. And I remember one time they just hit me, it went right in my mouth, and I got up and I was like, I'm gonna kill you and your whole family. And I'm with the swatter and I'm chasing him in the house. And then after I sat down, I was like, yeah, I'm not there yet.
But you had the mindfulness to know that you weren't, right?
Yeah, I tried, man. I tried, but like, it's only so long you can pull on the lion's tail before he turns around and bites your face off, right?
Oh man, it's such a balance. It's like, and every day I keep reminding myself it's a practice. I'm not a master yet. It's a practice. Like everything can be a practice. Mine for like a year and a half was like dealing with somebody who would regularly walk up to me and press a button, and I go, because
Yeah.
it's a trigger. And I had to learn how to realize that he didn't know what the trigger was. He
Mm,
couldn't, like, he doesn't know me. So how would he know what the trigger was? And I was like, oh shit, this is just for me.
yeah.
I get to like be present with myself, and I so cry while I'm talking to him. I'm like, I just need to let this out. And that's okay. Thank you so much for showing this to me. And I'm crying, crying, crying. But like I had to do that. So now when I get there, I know exactly what to do.
Yes. Yep.
So how did you get called into this service? Like when you had that awakening, like what compelled you to share what you learned?
Yeah, actually, I realized something is that if you really want to learn something, then teach it.
Mm,
When you teach it, you learn twice. So what happened was I started writing all the things that I was learning and things that I wanted to learn about, and I just started typing, and it eventually turned into, my first book, which is The World Is Yours, The Secrets Behind the Secret. And then once the book's out, now you're like, oh, now I got to sell it. Now I got to promote it. And then, so that kind of it led me into just being all in. But in 2011, I also became a life coach. I was like, let me get a life coach certification, which led me to uh, getting a hypnotherapy certification with my mother. And we opened a practice together, and I became certified in NLP, Reiki master, and I just started collecting certifications, right? And I developed those skills, and it wasn't until I found um, breath work, a specific type of breathing called deep diaphragmatic breathing. And I took all my certifications and skill sets and was able to house it under breathwork detox. So all those other things I could now facilitate in one practice to make it not just multifaceted, but extremely profound and cathartic. And that was the calling where I was like, okay, this modality works more efficient than any other modality I was certified in. It's very simple, but extremely powerful. Anyone can do it. There's low barrier to entry. And, it's something that is not woo woo, where I was able to get this modality into companies like Nike and
Yeah.
NASA, and that's a big thing for me because, I'm big into spirituality, but you can't go to these companies preaching spirituality.
Right.
That's why I love the word mindfulness, right? It's like mindfulness in business. Um, it's more accepted into the corporate world than spirituality. You just say mindfulness. And for me, breathwork and mindfulness was the Trojan horse to go in there and rock their world and wake them up.
I love that. I love that because I use frequency, and I think that's still too kind of woo, even though it's more in the quantum physics realm. It's like, okay, I got to like bring it down a little more because because it is. It's like, there are people who understand that, and yet having a more common word helps so much because otherwise it's like deer in the headlights.
Yeah, it's the somatics going on, but then also some words are really loaded, and even
Mhm.
spirituality is loaded because some people think that's, you know, um, crazy or devil worshiping, or, people have their own beliefs. So I try to stay in the clear, as best as I can, even though I go pretty deep down the rabbit hole. My goal isn't to teach the occultists. My goal is to talk to the masses because
Right,
those are the ones who need it the most.
right, right. And how are you seeing that? Oh, I have a couple questions coming through. So the first one is, have you been seeing shifts in the consciousness in the past, let's say 3 to 4 months? Have you been feeling it?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's been huge influxes of spiritual energy and solar flares and consciousness coming to the planet. And it comes in waves.
Mhm.
And a big wave came in 2012. There was a huge wave. Then a lot of people woke up. There's actually a pretty big wave in 2020 with the whole COVID stuff. A lot of people, woke up then. And if you were to take, even there was one in the 60s, right, when everyone was like peace and love, and one came in there. But what's about to come, you know, is a tsunami wave of consciousness that's going to completely radically shift the planet in ways that, we could never imagine. And if you take all the waves that ever came in and times it by 100, you might come close to what's about to happen.
I have so many chills right now for you saying that because I've been feeling that too. And it's really interesting because I live in a small community in Oregon, and I go to the local Walmart on occasion, and I am fascinated by seeing like some of the cashiers wearing crystals and talking about the universe talking to them. And it gets me so excited because it's like, okay, I'm not as crazy as I thought I was.
No, you're not crazy. That's for sure. I can guarantee you that. Even though you might feel it at times.
Yeah, well, it has been. I was down in Shasta during COVID, so like I never had to do the COVID dance. Like it was wild because when I went up to Orcas Island last year, and I walked into PTSD, and people weren't hugging, they weren't like, they didn't even want to shake my hand, and I'm like, oh, I, I didn't experience that because we had parties, we sang karaoke, we had dinner together. Like our lives didn't change in our little community. So I realized I was in this crazy ass bubble, and coming out of it to see like the trauma of people's posts. Like I go up to Portland every once in a while and there's still trauma there. And it's like, right, I didn't
Yeah.
experience that. So I was very, very blessed by source to having had to avoid that. But yeah. So how are you seeing that when you give talks? Like, are you seeing this? Like, I used to teach adult ed, and every semester I'd have one kid who, like, you saw the spark. Are you seeing that when you give your talks?
Oh yeah. People are waking up every single day. It's just, what causes people to wake up and what does it even mean to wake up?
Yeah.
What are you waking up to and or from? And I think it's just an awareness that we live within a matrix of confined systems that control us in ways that aren't in our highest and greatest good. And, these systems need to change. And the only way for them to change is for them to kind of crumble. And I think it's important for people to realize, if they can realize this, because we're about to go, into by the end of this year, actually, it's going to start to ramp up and going well into 2025. The world's going to seem very chaotic. And for me, when I see the world going into chaos, I react the opposite. I get excited. And the reason why I get excited because I know the game, right? The chessboard. And things need to get, bad before they get good. And I love what Don Alejandro, the Mayan grandfather, said. He said, the very walls that we're about to see come crumbling and crashing down, upon us are only the walls that kept us in prison our entire lives.
Mm.
The money's fake. They just print the stuff, right? And there's new financial system company that come in. There's new medical technologies that have been suppressed from us purposely, that would cause a lot of people not to get ill or sick, when they don't have to. There's many inventions that can change the face of the world that have been suppressed. And who's suppressing these stuff and why is it out and who's stopping it from coming out? And we're about to move into the time is that these things are going to get released to us, and it's going to be, humanity will rejoice. Like that is um, something that all religious scriptures talk about, right? The I Ching talks about the reset, and in our religions in the United States talks about the golden age and heaven on earth and the new earth, and all these religions that actually never agreed upon much, who actually went to war and killed themselves over indifferences. They're actually all agreeing on something. And that one
Yeah.
thing they're agreeing on is that some sort of cosmic phenomenon, some sort of godly phenomenon is upon us. And it's all intersecting at the same point, time, and space, which is our lifetime here and now. And it's kind of hard to believe or wrap your head around, we're about to witness some biblical shit go down. Pardon my French, but like, you
Well,
know,
we have been.
we
We
have
have
been.
been.
Yes,
I
we
mean,
have been.
and it's like what 2020 did for me was so I didn't get jabbed. Like my soul told me not to. I got alienated by a lot of people, but like one of them was my former partner. But the day he did, I physically couldn't touch him anymore.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so that was some sort of, and I'm not saying it's a mark, but it was some sort of delineation of energies. And there's no shame or blame or anything. It's just a different frequency.
Yeah.
But I could feel it viscerally.
Mhm.
And I was like, I wonder if this is like the beginning of the thing that's in Revelations. And I never read Revelations because like it just felt distorted to me, but I know elements of it, and some of the things that we've seen in the past 4 years kind of reflect that.
Yes. a lot of this, it's all come to fruition right before our
Yeah.
eyes. And it's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing. It really is, as crazy as some things might seem. If people knew what was on the other side, um, they would be rejoicing.
Oh, I feel it. I feel it. It's like I'm my little girl energy, that like, okay, when's it coming? When's it coming? I'm like trying to temper that with like it's divine timing. It's divine timing. But I feel like because it's getting closer and closer. So I'm feeling that energy of joy because I know what's on the other end. It's it's hard to stay present when I know what's coming.
Yeah, I get that.
And also knowing that a lot of people don't, and like having compassion for and holding space for them because they're just in the chaos. Because I've had the luxury of having a slow awakening since 2009 when my dad died and I saw his soul leave his body. Like I had 15 years of like nice, steady daily practices, learning new techniques and like learning how to uncover all of the programs and beliefs that aren't me. There are a lot of people who haven't done that.
Yeah, and and that's one of the things that will happen to people is that when this tsunami wave of consciousness hits, for us it's going to be great. But for the
Yeah.
people who aren't awake, which is the masses, um, that flashlight that's going to be shined in your life, it can make you go a little crazy because, you got to lose your mind, in this awakening process. And if you're not doing the work now, when that does hit, you're going to be forced to look at all your crap. I used to work with plant medicine. I take executives and CEOs to the jungles of Peru to
Oh,
drink
cool.
ayahuasca, and
Awesome.
they would always come up like, am I going to have a bad trip? Right? That was a term that they used. And I don't believe in bad trips. I
Right.
don't think there's no such thing. I think that when you either have a big ego or you chose to block things off, and when that medicine comes in and it rips off your blindfold and lifts up the rug of all the things you swept under, you freak out and see all these bad things, but really it's just your life that you
Right.
refuse to look at, and that is perceived as a bad trip. But no, it's just like it was time to look at what you've been denying.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so beautiful because like we're taught to deny that.
Yeah.
And this week I had this really fascinating thing where I thought I'd done all the forgiveness because I've worked really hard on forgiveness. There was a deeper level, and I'm like, okay, well, I get to go again, spend a couple hours in somatic work and be present with myself and feel it. But I know I'm like at a deeper level than I was 15 years ago. And to be confronted with it, like, boom, it's like, oh shit. Like I like, please, how can I help you? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that, we as healers can facilitate. I mean, ultimately it's within the self to accept and receive and integrate the information. But like, uh, I feel that I like, how can I help?
Yeah. And the thing about forgiveness, they say, is that it's the most selfish thing in the world
Mhm.
because it's the greatest thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
when you're holding on to grudges, you're holding on to pain, and when you're holding on to stories, that's stored emotions. That's why I love
mhm.
when the Buddha said, you know, what do you say? Oh, uh, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Right. Right.
It's only hurting us, you know?
Right.
And
And to have that awareness, it's like, oh shit, wait a minute. Like I can't express myself, so I'm gonna just hold that anger when it's just gonna like show up in my liver or my gallbladder or my kidneys or wherever whatever organ wants to store it is going to store it, and then I get sick
yeah,
because I didn't express myself.
exactly. Because, emotions are extremely toxic if they're not processed.
Mhm.
It's they did a study in University of, I think, British Columbia with Dr. Suzuki, who was the head of the genetics department. And they took the condensed molecules from the emotion of anger for just 1 hour, had enough toxicity to kill 80 guinea pigs. And that's the stuff that,
Crazy.
we choose to keep in. Like I do this breathwork detox, this modality, and I always tell people, listen, better out than in, because if you leave that stuff in, it manifests in all types of dis-ease and it wreaks havoc on our nervous system. Because the body holds on to the past, right? The mind always look in the future, but the body holds on to the past, and the body's a living library. So when we don't have the emotional intelligence when we're younger to process those emotions, they get stored in those tissues and organs, like you said, and that's where a lot of health complications come from. But Western medicine isn't talking about that. That's not in the textbooks. They're giving you a pill, and it's managing your symptoms and creating other ones, which is just crazy. I'm not
Mhm.
trying to mow the lawn and cut the grass. I'm trying to rip out the roots so the weeds don't grow back. Let's get
Right.
to the cause of the
Oh
problem.
yeah. Oh yeah, I recently started studying the Chinese meridians because I've clearly I've known them in previous lifetimes because I'm picking them up so fast. Like there's a spot on my hip, that's my gallbladder. It's been hurting for years and I didn't know it. I started pressing it. It was like, oh, okay, like simple stuff.
Yeah.
Just knowing acupressure points that's like been known for 3, 4 thousand years, and we're not taught it because it's not Western medicine, which is a whole different frequency. It's a
Yeah.
different frequency that is designed to keep people sick.
Yes. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
there's no money in the cure.
I know. I know. I had a about 10 years ago, my mom was thinking about getting her hip replaced because she had a fall. And we went to a doctor and he wanted to put a stent in her heart because she had pain. And I said, well, what about turmeric? And he was from India. And he said, what about it? I was like,
Yeah.
okay. Here's this website called Green Med Info, and you might want to look up the benefits of turmeric just as an option for you. And he was like, you're crazy. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not really. I just like plants.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. People don't realize that, food can really heal them. But even more surprising is I realize how the energy blocks
Mhm,
can removing them can heal people. I've
mhm,
witnessed hundreds of miracles with the breathwork specifically because it's cathartic and it removes energy blocks through the nadi paths, which is the energetic highways within the body. And most people know that we have blood in our body, because we can see the veins and that's how it gets distributed. That's how blood gets distributed throughout the body. But how does energy get distributed throughout the body? We all agree that there's energy flowing through our body, but how does it get distributed? It gets distributed by the 72,000 nadis, which are the energetic pathways. Now, Vedic, Eastern, they understand this, but anatomically, you can't cut yourself open and see a nadi.
right.
It's energetic, but when they get clogged, this is where people I feel stuck. Well, what's stuck about you? You're not physically stuck. You're walking back and forth. Is your brain stuck? You're frozen. No, it's actually there's a blockage that's stuck in the energy um, within your body, and that's
Mhm,
within the nadis. And there's only one thing that clears the nadis, and that's the breath. The breath is connected to all 72,000 nadis. And if you do certain breathing techniques, you can clear the energetic and emotional blockages. And when you're able to do that, you're actually able to manifest things that you want. Because in order to let things in, you need to let things go. But there's no button that we have on our body that allows things to be let go. So we need to learn how to do that. And unfortunately, meditation doesn't do that.
right.
It has other benefits, and maybe over time you'll see those compounded benefits. Yoga, it's really centered around the breath because the yoga without the breath is just stretching. That's
Right.
not going to do much for you. The breath is the key to it
Mhm.
all, and we can biohack our bodies with the breath, and that's what got me excited on all the things that I've learned is learning how to biohack the breath. It's like a video game. We played video games before, and sometimes in these video games, there's cheat codes. You can do up, down, left, right, A, B, A, B, and then all of a sudden Mario goes 12 feet, or your little knife turns into a bazooka, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, humans designed video games, but who designed humans? Let's just say a higher power, right? That's pretty damn intelligent. And that higher power that designed humans designed us with a cheat code. And instead of up, down, left, right, A, B, if you do this very specific breathing technique for a very specific amount of time in the exact way, that I was taught and how I show people, you unlock cheat codes and abilities within the body. One of those things being the production of microdosing DMT, which is the methyltryptamine, which is the spirit molecule. And that's what's responsible for launching us in another dimension when we go to bed at night. And it's the world's greatest virtual reality. And we can do that, lucid dream while awake. And I've had people connect to the other side, talk to loved ones, go to different dimensions, like heal themselves instantaneously. And you would never think that it was all done through the breath. And I'm still amazed. And a lot of the times when I talk about all the things, I probably just hit on about 20% of the things. When I talk about all the things the breath can do, I'm sitting here like, you know what? If I was on the other side of this podcast or TV, I would not believe me. It sounds too good to be true. And, the only way to really understand it is to experience it, right?
Mhm.
Because like when I try to describe this modality to people, it's like trying to describe a kaleidoscope to a blind person. Like you can't explain it, you can only experience it.
Right.
I've seen amazing things, happen, and just the value of clarity. Clarity in itself is just so crucial because the opposite of clarity is confusion, and to me, confusion is temporary insanity. It sucks.
Yeah.
And it's pretty stressful when you don't know that next step to take in life, or if you should stay in your job or leave your job or stay in this relationship or get out of the relationship or move from this city to that city or that state. And that confusion. But how do you get clarity and how do you get creativity?
Right.
Um, you don't. You actually just remove the things that are in the way, which are
Mhm.
those energetic blocks. So really focusing on moving energy within the body, because a lot of it's stagnant and stuck. And even in Chinese medicine, that's where all the disease comes from, is that when energy is supposed to be flowing, right? And just like water, when water's flowing, it's fine. But what do you have when you get water that just sits there for a long time, right? It begins to smell, gets moldy, you get all these little bugs. And same thing, energy within our body, if it's not flowing and it gets hit, for one, when it hits like a dam. And when the energy is supposed to flow and it gets stopped, well, what does it do? Just like water, it goes around and it goes somewhere where it's not supposed to. And when you got energy in your body that's supposed to be flowing in this direction and is going elsewhere, this is where stress, anxiety, and also the feeling of not feeling comfortable in your own body. That's something I experienced for a long time, is not feeling comfortable in my own skin. And I think, the more I talk to people, the more I realize a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's hard. Like I was an expert in numbing myself out for decades. Because I was all here. I was, an academic. And when I started paying attention to my body again, it was so communicative with me.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
like, oh, geez, I'm so sorry, body. Like, and now that I'm doing the meridian work, I'm getting even more communication. And it's just, it's just going deeper to understanding how I can interrelate with this temple that I have. And, because I know for a fact that my soul dwells within, because I saw that with my dad dying, his soul left his body and I didn't recognize his body anymore, which was trippy because it was like somebody's laying there, but it's not my dad. Um, so I know that the soul dwells within, interacts, is part of this existence, but the soul is also much more multidimensional than we give it credit for. And for us to be in this realm, we have to have this. We have to have our bodies. So to be able to connect with and honor and love and appreciate and heal oneself allows us to be in that multidimensional state more.
Yes, there's many aspects to us, and I think when you start to get into this world that we're in, people realize, oh wait, I'm actually a soul, right? I'm not a human having a spiritual experience. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. That's the first realization. And then you're like, oh, I have a higher self. There's something bigger than me out there that's also me. And then once you go even deeper into it, you realize there's many different versions of aspects of yourself. And I learned this in shamanism. 2012, I met a really powerful shaman. She trained me for like 5 years. I don't consider myself a shaman, right? I'm very urban, so and I don't follow that path that they do. Kind of just creating my own thing. But there's something called soul retrieval, and your soul can fracture, and you have all these fractals, and when trauma happens, there's aspects of your soul that will literally leave out the body because they don't like the experience, and then they'll be kind of disembodied in the spiritual realm, and they'll literally be floating around. And we have to make a point to go back and retrieve these lost aspects of ourselves back into the body and integrate them, the healed version of them, not the hurt version. And there's work that goes around that you can do yourself for that, and then there's shamans you can go do and do soul retrievals, and it's quite fascinating what we don't know.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I know. I've had Akashic records, I've had soul retrievals, I've had so many different elements of healing the self, and each modality has fascinating aspects to it.
Yes.
And to pull in what resonate, like hold on. We have the opportunity this is too many things to explore each one to find out how we can heal ourselves. We don't have to do it alone,
Yeah.
but the integration part is alone.
Yes. Well said.
Thank you. So, oh man, I'm like, there's so many cool things I want to talk to you about, because like you and I are resonating at the same frequency on so many levels. But what this is an interesting realm that's coming through. Disclosure. So I have been feeling, and so this is a personal thing. So the Chevron deference, which is a whole Supreme Court thing where back in the 1980s, they gave agencies the power to make laws that weren't laws because they didn't want to deal with it in Congress. Well, for me, one of those curiosities is the DMV. I'm a law-abiding citizen. My car registration was up last month.
Mhm.
Every single year or every 2 years, I've gotten the registration. I didn't get a registration this year. I'm like,
Why is that?
I don't know. But it's curious because it's like, because they know my address, they have my email, they have everything. There's no reason why they wouldn't. But it's like, is this a Chevron deference? Like, I'm not sure. Are you seeing little things like that happening in your life where you're just like, that that's not a thing anymore? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I got my car and my registration. They just collected my money because I got a new car, so
Okay.
I didn't experience that. Um, but when you say disclosure, what do you mean by that exactly? Because
There's so many layers. There's so many
okay,
layers. So like, for example,
because I think of aliens when you say
well,
disclosure.
we'll do alien. Alien's the least controversial of the ones that are popping through my head. So, so like I have seen and felt, I'd like last 2 weeks ago, I was laying outside. I ground a lot. I love grounding. And I'm just outside and enjoying the weather and everything. And I see this thing go zzz, and it stops. and it looks at me, and then it goes like this. And then once it passed my peripheral, it zoomed away. And I'm noticing more and more, and I've seen this big thing. I saw a thing that was the size of a football field fly over me another week. I was like, okay, this is getting kind of like can't ignore it kind of level. So I'm wondering, like, how are you seeing that show up?
Like cosmic phenomenons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will say that are there is a disclosure event that's about to happen, and it's been being dripped to us. I think the government last year, just went on public record for the first time saying UFOs exist. So they've been peppering it to us for a while because it was the greatest kept secret for a long time. And when I first saw a UFO, I actually went to, again, I was skeptical, and I only bought this ticket to this event so I could, uh, either prove myself right or wrong.
Mhm.
And it was called the CE5 event, and it stands for
Part
Close
of that, yeah.
Encounters of the Fifth Kind. Yeah, so I got certified in it. Um, and I went to it, and it was 300 people that showed up, not one darn UFO. So I'm like, man, this is baloney. I knew I was going to see no stupid UFO, but I got excited. I thought I was kind of. And
Mhm.
then I got invited to another one, and a friend invited me. So this one was different. This
Okay.
one was at Joshua Tree, and they interviewed like hundreds of people, and they only chose 12 people. I happened to be one of the 12 people that they chose.
Okay.
And I go to the event, and it was a 3-day event. And all 3 days, I had encounters, and UFO showed up every single day.
Wow.
And one came so close that from one moment to the next, I felt like a changed person. And the reason being, and I got the download of why they kept this secret from humanity for so long is because once you see a UFO with your own eyes and you see it and and it glows in front of you and then it shrinks and then it goes 3,000 miles per hour to the left and then 3,000 miles to the right and then goes up into the air and disappears, like, and you see it and you're like, yep, that was a UFO. It does something to your consciousness. And the
Mhm.
best way to describe it is I felt like it shattered this glass ceiling of my consciousness that I didn't even know was there. And from one moment to the next, I go, anything's possible. And once the powers that be, they don't want humanity expanding their consciousness or thinking anything is possible, on a spiritual, cosmic, galactic level. It just immediately raised my consciousness, and it could never go back down. And I forget which somebody said it, but they said, once your consciousness is stretched to a new dimension, it can't go back to where it was. And that's how I felt. So, yeah, so they've been peppering us, but there's a big disclosure that's going to happen that's part of the awakening and also the ascension plan, and it has to happen, but it needs to happen in the right way because like when we get to these times that we're going in, there's things that are absolutely, inevitably, 1000% have to, need to, and going to change. The financial system, right? Religion, um, all these things. And now, if you just look at the financial system, right? You got, quote unquote, for lack of better words, let's just say the bad guys and the good guys. Okay. Keep it
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
But the bad guys, want us into complete digital currency with these chips, and they want to be able to, shut off, our chip in a second, and they have their own agenda. Um, and there's a battle between controlling the narrative because the financial system is going to change no matter what. And the good guys have their own narrative. Same thing with the ET disclosure, right? The bad guys actually have Project Bluebeam, which people can Google that, and they can fake an alien invasion and get people in fear and pass new crazy laws, and there's all types of crazy things they could do. It's
Right.
in the cards that they actually might do it. I'll be shocked if they do, and if they do, that means we're really close to the end times. By the end
Right.
times, I
Right. But
mean,
I don't feel that. I don't feel that that trajectory.
yeah, I think it's going to be organic where people um, understand the reality of life on the other planets, and they realize that it's star brothers and sisters. And when we open ourselves up to that possibility, um, you know, our minds and our everything expands, and we feel bigger because they make us feel so small. Like, this is your only lifetime you've ever lived. YOLO. After this, you go into the dirt and you're gonna be there forever, or even, even sitting in heaven, for eternity. Like, that's gonna get boring.
Right. Right. Like,
You
but what
got,
I know for a fact, because I've done so much work on myself, I am an ancient soul. I've had many, many lifetimes in many different places. And I came here for this one because I knew it was going to happen.
yes. Yeah, and many of us have, and even people who are listening, um, my guess would be they're a part of the plan too, because I don't think they would made it this far in the podcast or even be following you if they weren't on that path and here for a reason, even if they're not
So,
there.
yeah.
And that's how it works, because your vibe attracts your tribe, right?
Right. Yeah, I love it because like I feel like my whole mission, not what I do for a living, my sole mission is to remember my Christ consciousness.
Mm.
And whatever term you want to call that, that's the phrase I use, where I'm fully embodying that unconditional love that I am at my core, and bring in that golden age.
Yep.
And every time I check in with myself, because I'm calling in my higher self and source, the joy of what's going to be coming is beyond anything I think any of us can really comprehend.
Oh yeah. Um, you can't comprehend it, you can't explain it, but if I was to sum it up into one word, it'd be paradise. We will live in paradise. And right now we do not live in paradise. As good as
Right.
it may be, you could be on the beach right now. It's like, the humans, as far as the amount of joy that we feel, as opposed to what we are, is only 6%. And that's usually at an orgasm, point of orgasm. So how we're supposed to feel, that level of connectivity to source, and, just filled with, burning, passion and willpower, we don't know what that's like. And the reason why we don't is because we never felt it, so we just accepted this as the norm. But this is so far from normal. And
Right.
when these things begin to take place, and we get to that place, it's going to be paradise. It's going to be heaven on earth. It's going to be what all these religious scriptures talked about. And it's interesting for people like me, and even people younger than me, who are seeing this too. That's how they came here for this. This is a very special lifetime. And I know there's many, many lifetimes out there, but like Michael Jackson said on his last tour, this is it. This is it.
He who what a light he is. Notice I'm saying is.
Yeah, yeah, right.
That came out okay. I didn't know I was gonna say is. Um, we've had these light beings peppered throughout history. I think they've gotten more. I'll just all right, it's gonna go here. Like when I saw clips from the opening ceremony of the Olympics,
Oh God.
my first thought was, wow, we've gone there.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow, they're not even hiding it anymore. They're not hiding it anymore. It's just dark. It's dark. Okay. So contrast that with like just me sitting outside in the ground and looking at the clouds and seeing the vibration and feeling the fairies and the elementals. Like if I go in peripheral, I can see the elementals. It's amazing. Like I have that choice, or I could watch something that's negative programming on a level that isn't even pretending anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of like trying to wake more people up so they can see it if they choose, right? We're still in a choice point where we can choose, or we can choose either way. I
Yeah.
think when we get closer to with all these X flares that are knocking me out and giving me headaches I've never had. I think that's going to become it's the choice is going to be more and more stark.
Yeah, well, what's happening now is a polarizing of
Mhm.
humanity, and the gap is going to get bigger and bigger, where it's them and us, and not saying them and us as like, fighting wise.
Right.
It's like you're either going to be a part of this new earth, or you're
Mhm.
going to roll into deeper, darker unconscious, and that's the choice that you chose, and you're not ready, and you'll have different an experience for what's to come. Not an
Mhm.
experience I would want to have, because
Right.
that's not going to be good. The experience
Right.
we're going to have, because we did the work, and we're light warriors and light workers, which is a difference. We can talk about that. Um, we're going to have a much blissful experience during this transition, and not everyone's going to make it. And that's like, I'm not saying it's going to be the 144,000, Jehovah Witness. I'm just saying
Right.
not
Right.
everyone's going to make it. It has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with light, how much
Mhm.
light that you hold. And if you hold at least 50% light or more, um, and your intentions are pure, doesn't matter if you did bad things. Doesn't matter if you killed somebody, believe it or not, that's could be experience that you signed up for. It's about how much light is in you, and your intentions is also who you are. People don't know who they are. They'll identify themselves as their job. Well, that's not who you are. That's what you do. And some people say, I'm a mother. Well, yes, you're a mother, but that's not who you are. People don't know who they are, and who they are is far more significant and monumental than they could ever imagine. And just to think that you live thousands of lifetimes, and that's why, like, when I hit a certain level of awareness, um, you can't be racist. You can't be
Right.
judgmental, because like I'm sitting here and like, okay, well, if I'm as quote unquote as evolved as I think I am, well, I was a black person, I was a Chinese person, I was a gay person, I was a murderer, I was probably a drag queen. Who the heck knows, right? In all these
Right.
lifetimes. And if I don't think that, then I'm saying I'm not an evolved soul. And
Right.
if I do think that, then how could I ever judge somebody if I was that? So when
Mhm.
I started thinking like that, I'm like, okay, so this is all a game, this is all facade, and I want to kind of connect to my true soul essence and the totality of who I am and the fullness of who I am. Curtis, here, this is me right now, but this isn't really who I am. And just recently, I found out my last name Thomas isn't even Thomas, which is crazy. And so I wonder if I can talk about this on the podcast. Okay. So, Jesus. So, all right. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I had a traumatic event, and it was on Christmas morning, and I happened to take a trip. Now, fast forward, to 2 years ago, I took a trip to Egypt. There was a pilgrimage, and I went to India and Nepal, the Himalayas, and I went to Jerusalem. And I was in Jerusalem on Christmas morning. My sister sends me a text message of some guy of obituary, and I'm like, "Who's this guy?" Because he had a different last name, but he looked just like my dad. He's like, "That's our grandfather." And I'm like, what? And I go, but wait, why is his last name that? And she goes, exactly. I go, wait, so shouldn't that be our last name? She's like, that should be our last name. His last name was Edward Christmas. Found out
Wow.
my name was Curtis Christmas on Christmas morning in Jerusalem. And when I had that traumatic event, and when I was 4 or 5 years old, I was a walk-in on Christmas morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I
Wow.
just found that out 2 years ago. So it's like, oh,
That's
that's new
wild.
information, right? It's pretty cool.
Wow, that's wild. Especially coming in that early.
I know. Wow.
Wow. That is
Mhm.
so cool. Do you remember anything of the life? I mean, because you came in so early, do you remember anything from 1 to 5 or
Everything.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
my mom just gave me a photo album, and going through the album, I was like, oh, I remember this day. Yeah, we went here, we walked past, you parked next to a red car. She's like, how the hell do you remember that? And part of it is I think because the memories were downloaded into me when
Okay.
the new soul of who I am now came into the body.
Mhm.
It's just so vivid. I remember the house. I remember where I remember where everything was, and I took on that, also the not just the memories, but the trauma of the
Right.
child, which is kind of crazy because the first 7 years kind of makes up who you are.
Mhm.
So, but that was a choice that I made to come in during this time, you know? So,
That is so fascinating. I love that.
yeah, wild stuff.
It's amazing, like how because I see the like I break down multidimensionality into like seeing all the different aspects of the me in this iteration, because that's the way my left brain needs to understand it. So like I have a 5-speed BMW that I love driving around corners fast. I also love baking. I love grounding. I love all these different aspects. I have a PhD that I don't really use very much, but like they're aspects of a greater being than me. Like they're added all up, they're a fractal of the me.
Yeah.
And so, but it helps me to um process the multidimensionality of who I am. Does that make
Yes.
sense? Because if I can see, if I have all these different aspects of me and there's not one that's dominant over another, that's multidimensional.
Yes.
And so then when I connect with an animal without a picture to do a session in England, I know that's just tapping into universal consciousness. And my left brain really wants to try to understand and quantify that because, former historian, like the whole analytical shit. But my right brain is like, no, this is just actually happening. You can feel the energy of the sheep talking to your heart. You don't need to understand it. You're just channeling right now. So it's just like the level of unknowingness that we're going to open up as a package or a present.
Yeah.
Just so excited to see like how big this can get.
As big as you can imagine, plus bigger. It's exciting though. I mean, I would just encourage people um, to get excited even when it doesn't look exciting, because what's on the other end of that is it's magic. And for the people who are not prepared, it's gonna seem like chaos, right? And the people who are prepared are gonna be like, this is a dream come true.
Mhm.
And just know that if you're listening to this podcast, you're a part of the dream come true people, or else you just wouldn't be listening, period.
Right, right. Kurtis, I am so grateful for the opportunity to connect with you and your light and all the work you do in the world and who your big self in this 3D iteration is. I'm just so grateful to know you and that you're on the planet with me. And I just want to ask you that final question because I'm looking at the time and we could talk for like 3 or 4 hours and I'm trying to be mindful of this. How do people find you?
Okay, there's two ways. One is on my Instagram, is Man from the Stars. Man from the Stars is on Instagram. And then anybody who wants to go to my website is breathworkdetox.com. And if they want to try one of my virtual breathwork events, I do them every new moon and every full moon, so every 2 weeks. And I created a podcast code for you that's 50% off for all your listeners. It's called Podcast 50, and they can use that code and they can come see what all the hype's about.
Thank you. Kurtis, thank you so much for your time and sharing this space with me and for this amazing conversation. I am so, so very grateful.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun. We'll do it again.
Yes, we will.